Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we have a conversation about the mundane. One thing that we can assure you is that our intentions is to have a conversation that will be less than fascinating so that you and the people you're listening with can just drift off. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will listen and sleep. We invite you to rate us on iTunes and leave a comment if you're enjoying our podcast so that when other people look and say, what is this Insomnia Project podcast? They can read some reviews that say how it helps you relax, chill, and possibly sleep. I'm your host, Marco Timpano.
And I'm your co-host, Nidhi Khanna. Marco, the other day I was at like a comedy, not a comedy club, but I was at a independent comedy show. It was like comics who were doing stand-up, but they were trying out new material with the audience. And one of the prizes that they gave away was a huge jar of pickled vegetables.
Okay.
Guess who won?
Oh, you won?
I did.
What did you have to do to win?
I answered a piece of trivia question.
Okay.
I forgot what the answer was.
Fair.
But I said something that sounded right, and I guess it was the right answer.
More importantly, what kind of vegetables are in this giant pickle jar?
There was everything, Marco.
Really?
There were things that I was like, you pickle that?
Like what?
You had your red pepper, which was unusual. You had your regular, you had mushrooms.
Yum, my favorite.
Cauliflower.
Not my favorite.
Carrots? I think there was a carrot in there. Yeah, it was good. Got like a lot of garlic in that pickle brine.
Well, that sounds to me like what Italians call giardiniera, which is kind of like a pickling of a bunch of different garden vegetables.
Why do people pickle?
Oh, I think pickling is important because back in the day, you would be harvesting all these vegetables at the time of harvest, but you would want to eat them in months where you don't have the ability to harvest. So, for example, you would pickle, let's say you'd pickle cucumbers, because cucumbers are, when you plant cucumbers on the vine, produces a lot of pickles, and produces a lot of cucumbers. And whereas in the summer you'll be eating cucumbers every day, you can get a little sick of cucumbers, but in the winter there's no cucumbers to be had. So the method of preserving them would be to pickle them, and by pickling them would allow you to have pickles in this case, or cucumbers that have been pickled, all year round.
That sounds like an answer that would be correct.
But it's not?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, I thought you were going to say, but it's not.
No,
Okay.
but it sounds right.
I don't know the sort of origins of pickling, but that's what I would guesstimate, yeah. And, that's where the pickled cucumber gets its name, pickle. Have you ever had a new dill pickle?
No, what is that?
Oh, it's a great pickle. So it's so you know how a pickle has a crunch to it?
Yes.
Right? The new dill is a pickle that hasn't been pickled as strongly, so it's not as crunchy. It's a little bit more closer to a cucumber.
Okay.
So it's got a cucumber-ness to it. It's softer to the bite, and it's a little bit more cucumbery.
I prefer the crunchy pickles.
But you haven't had the new dill, so...
Correct.
See, I thought I did too, and I prefer a smaller pickle than the large pickles. You know what I mean? You can get those really big kosher pickles, or you can get the little tiny dill pickles, and...
I used to really like the sweet pickles in the sweet brine.
See, a new dill pickle, to me, tastes sweeter as well.
Okay. Do you know what a Kool-Aid pickle is?
A Kool-Aid pickle? No, I don't.
So Kool-Aid pickles, or Koolicles, are like a southern United States thing, apparently.
Okay.
And they're created by soaking dill pickles in a mixture of Kool-Aid and pickle brine.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the? I would love to try that. Is there a particular brand of Kool-Aid, or
isn't Kool-Aid the brand?
Sorry, is there a different? I should say, is there a particular flavor of Kool-Aid?
Oh, I don't know, but I would kind of think like the red Kool-Aid would be good, or the blue.
The blue,
Oh,
like
I
a
don't know.
blueberry? No, I would go
Red?
with. I would go with red, or to be safe, like a lime or a lemon.
Oh, yeah, okay, you could do that too.
So I would not want a grape flavored dill pickle. I don't like the flavor
Fair
of
enough.
grape.
Fair enough. Do you pickle?
My mom,
Really?
yeah, she would pickle, like, as I said to you, the jardiniera or the garden vegetables. She would pickle. I love pickled mushrooms, in particular, Nidhi, because you can pickle some mushrooms that we don't grow here. So, like, I've had pickled porcinis. I've had pickled wild mushrooms from different parts of Italy, and they're just delicious. They really are.
How long does it actually take to pickle, do you think? Like,
No idea.
Huh.
I think the longer you pickle, the better it is. I don't know. I know that if you can get unpasteurized pickled products, they're really good for you because they have a lot of good gut bacteria in it. So kimchi, I think kimchi is kimchi's fermented. I don't know if it falls under pickled, but kimchi is fermented,
Right.
Korean fermented cabbage.
I love kimchi.
So good for you.
I
Just
know.
like horseradish. Would
Yeah.
horseradish be considered
it's a
a
good
pickled
question.
product? It's kind of one of those.
It's fermented, I think.
It's definitely fermented. So if you can get an unpasteurized horseradish, no, not a horseradish. I'm sorry. I'm trying to say, not horseradish. What is the stuff that you get on hot dogs?
Yeah, horseradish.
No, well, yes, you can put horseradish, but it's sauerkraut. I'm trying to say sauerkraut,
Oh.
and I'm saying horseradish. There's another example, Nidhi, of me thinking one thing and saying the other and convincing people. But if you can get unpasteurized sauerkraut, it's really good for your gut bacteria.
So, Marco, fermenting is actually considered a pickling method.
Okay, so there you go. So
But
kimchi would be a style of
Pickling. It's just a very specific one, and
Okay.
I couldn't really tell you much more than
Fair enough.
that at
Fair
this
enough. So
point.
you've never pickled. It sounds like you're
No.
very new to pickling.
I clearly. No, I don't pickle. I'm not actually the biggest fan of like pickled vegetables and things like that.
What about olives?
Love olives.
Olives in a brine.
Yeah. Well, I actually prefer them without the brine. Like I know,
So just
like
like
not in
from-
the big jar, but I like them like as,
Just like that, right?
yeah, scooped olives or whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Listen, I get it. Now, speaking of pickling, this past weekend, I was talking to you about this, and that's how we came up with, we should talk about pickles and pickling. I pickled a wall.
Right. So you need to explain this to me because I still don't quite understand what that means.
Okay, Nidhi, just sit back and relax. I'm going to talk about pickling wood. So, pickling wood, as I do it, or as I have done it, is a process by which you pickle wood that's on a wall in order for the wood to absorb the color of the pickling paint that you're going to use. So in this case, I was pickling a wall at my cottage. So what I discovered...
So wait, does that mean like is that the equivalent of like applying like a primer or stripping it or something? No.
Just sit back and relax, because
Okay.
here's the story
Okay.
of my pickling wall. So at my cottage, we have paneling on a lot of the walls, but what I noticed was behind this paneling, so it kind of looks like a basement, those old basements that had paneling in it. When I pulled back one of the paneling, I noticed that there was tongue and groove wood that would cause the wall. So
does that
basically
mean?
what it is it's slats of wood, so pieces of wood that on the top end would have what appears to be a little part that jets out, so the tongue, and the bottom piece of the wood that would go on top of it would have a groove that little tongue would fit into. So you could put wood on top of wood on top of wood and stack it as you would to form a wall. And you could stagger the wood so that you have different patterns, or you could put the wood on top of each other. Now, the next time you go into a hardware type store, one of those big box, home stores that provides different needs for your home. You'll notice if you go into the lumber section, need tongue and groove, pine, or cedar. Behind the paneling, I found, which I didn't realize, old wallpaper from the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
That had kind of a greenish pattern of what looks like weeping willow type trees that are kind of blowing in the distance. So it just had this really soft and subtle look to it, but it didn't look like contemporary wallpaper. It looked like something that you would find, 80 plus years ago.
So here's a question for you.
Sure.
When you found, or when you discovered the wallpaper, what was your first honest reaction? Was it more like, this is gross, or this is kind of kitschy and cool?
It was kind of like, this is really cool in a sort of, look at what wallpaper must have looked like back in the day and what this place must have looked like. And just to see old, I don't know if it would be considered a textile, but certainly old print, old wallpaper print, and to see it in a state that's not a museum piece. So when you go to certain old homes and they recreate what it would have been like in the 1890s or the 1920s, and you're sort of a visitor in a museum and you see it. Well, when you have that in front of you, it strikes you in a very interesting way. Now, realize that as I pulled away the paneling, not all the wallpaper was pristine because it was really old and kind of cracked.
Right.
But when we went to remove the wallpaper, we saved pieces of it so that we could then later pay homage to what was in the cottage previous, right? So
that's pretty cool.
That was actually Amanda's idea, so she made me save it. And so at this point, I've got a wall of tongue and groove wood that's old. I don't know what kind of wood it could be, but I've got this wallpaper to contend with. And it's been on the walls for at least, let's say 50 years to be safe, but I would say closer to 70 years. And not having wallpaper remover and not knowing what it would do to this wallpaper that I had on the paneling, onto the tongue and groove wood, I figured, let me start with using just hot water. And so I wet the wallpaper with hot water and a sponge, and I could feel the glue, or I could smell the glue, and it didn't smell like contemporary glue, as odd as that sounds. It just had a different viscosity or scent to it. It just felt old, for lack of a better word. So I would wet it, reapply, wet it, and sure enough, Nidhi, as I'm pulling away the wallpaper, I'm finding patches of other wallpaper underneath this wallpaper. And this other wallpaper kind of looked like birch bark, or it had sort of a birch barky kind of design. But when I looked closer at it, it had little yellow X's, or what appeared to be X's, or possibly little X-like birds. So they made these yellow markings to resemble birds. So I think when you saw the whole wallpaper, you would get that impression. However, I didn't find a lot of that particular wallpaper, so I don't know if it was just a patch job that was done in certain places, because there was very little of that wallpaper.
Right.
So then I go about by taking the wallpaper down, and I'm taking it down in patches and scraping it off, and I used a tool that is this sort of multi-purpose tool that one uses with their painting accoutrements. So it helps you to clean a roller, it helps you to take things out of a groove, it has a bit of a scraper on the end. And I was very fortunate because I had seen it as I was leaving my home, and I thought, I should bring this with me. And in fact, I was able to scrape off the wallpaper because I had this scraping tool, and it did not damage the wood, because the wood on the bottom, you've got to be careful. You don't want to
scratch it
or make grooves in it.
How many hours in are you at this point?
Well, I only did one wall.
Okay.
One wall and a pinch of its adjoining wall. So just a little tiny, it's not even a half wall. Let's say it's a meter in length. Okay, so maybe 2 feet, let's say. I don't know the exact number conversion of a meter into feet, but I'm sure somebody will say I'm off. But regardless, it wasn't very big, the secondary wall. And I needed to do that secondary wall because that's where the pieces of wood kind of joined, and so if I didn't remove the paneling from that small little meter wall, I would have it would be difficult for me to get into the corner, and that's why I did it.
We live in a culture obsessed with dieting, weight loss, and exercise, and that can make eating disorder behaviors easy to miss. But the reality is, eating disorders are serious mental illnesses that take a major toll on your health and your life. But recovery is possible. Eating disorders are more common than you might think. Chances are you know someone who is struggling with one, or maybe you're struggling yourself. If you're concerned about an eating disorder in yourself or a loved one, I want to introduce you to Equip. Equip is a fully virtual, evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps patients achieve lasting recovery at home. Every Equip patient is matched with a multidisciplinary care team that includes a therapist, dietitian, medical provider, and mentors. And you get a personalized treatment plan that's tailored to your unique goals and challenges. Equip treats patients of all ages and all eating disorder diagnoses. It's covered by insurance, and there's no wait list. If you think that you or a loved one could be struggling with an eating disorder, don't wait to get help. Visit equip.health to learn more. That's equip.health.
When it comes to managing money, forget the hype and look at the results. Bill has $1 trillion of secure payments powering our bill pay tools. Instead of just moving money, Bill is powering the financial operations of nearly 500,000 customers. So stop the guesswork and start scaling with the proven choice. Ready to talk with an expert? Visit Bill.com/proven to get started. And grab a $250 gift card as a thank you. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.
Dear McDonald's, your breakfast menu? Fire. 10s across the board. I could be happy with anything, even though I ordered the same thing every time. Thanks for not judging me. I'll try something new next time. Maybe.
Score a 2 for $5 deal on a sausage McMuffin with egg and more. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
So I'm removing the wallpaper, and actually it was time consuming, but it was actually more interesting or more fun part of the process. So removed all the wallpaper off the wall, and now I'm seeing wood. I'm seeing the tongue and groove wood. So I figured I better remove all the glue that might be stuck on there and little pieces of wallpaper that I didn't really notice. So I take a damp, warm sponge and I just remove all that glue and all that debris that's left behind from wallpaper that's been scraped off, because the big chunks you notice, but there might be little tiny morsels that you'll find in corners or in little spots within the wall.
Sure.
Right? So I do that, and now it's time for me to sand the wall, because so when you pickle wood, it basically absorbs the paint and it allows you to see the grain of the wood without just being paint on wood. So there's a difference. It kind of gives you that look of wood that has been bleached. So that's a great way to look at it. In this case, it's been pickled, so the process is slightly different than beached wood, but it has a sort of look of wood that has absorbed paint into the grain of the wood. Follow? Mm-hmm. So I decided I should sand it, because this is wood that hasn't seen the light of day for maybe 40 years. Who knows when the paneling went up, and has had wallpaper on it for many years. And I needed the wood to sort of breathe. So I sort of sanded it down with a medium sandpaper on a sanding tool, which allowed me to get any of the stubborn pieces of wallpaper that may have remained, or any residual glue that I may have missed.
What was Amanda doing during all of this?
She was lying back and reading. She had some scripts she had to read, and she would often say to me, "Can I help you?" And I was kind of like, "No, let me do this." And to be quite honest with you, she was very helpful, because I don't want it for it to sound like she just lounged around. She ensured that I had a mask, so she went to the hardware store to get me a mask, because when you're sanding,
right, it can get back
all this dust.
Yeah.
And she kind of wanted me always to have the mask on and my glasses. And
see, good for Amanda, because I would have just sat back and lounged.
well, she was also when I would need a refreshment or whatnot, and she also was like, why don't you have the windows open while you're sanding?
She was looking out for you.
She was looking out for me, for sure. And
I would have been at the beach just reading.
Fair enough. And she would have helped. If the project was bigger, I could have used her help. But when you're dealing with one wall, it's almost
easier to just
to do it yourself kind of thing. And when I was on the ladder, I would ask her for various things, and she would bring them to me, right?
Nice.
So at this point, I've sanded the wall. And now it's time to condition the wood. So I have this product. It's a clear product that I would paint on and leave for 1 to 5 minutes onto the wood that I think would help open the pores. I'm not exactly sure, Nidhi, what it did, but I know that it was the step that I needed to do prior to the pickling of the wood with the pickle wash. Follow?
Sure.
So I took a paintbrush and I would paint the different strips of wood, and then I would let it sit for about, let's say 2 minutes. I would then take a rag, and I bought a bag of rags. So like for $5 you get just a huge bag of rags, and I would wipe the excess conditioning, not paint but product agent off the wood, and thus it would be ready to pickle. So at this point, it's time for me to pickle, because I've removed the panel, I've stripped the wallpaper, I've sanded and I've conditioned the wood.
So when you say it's now ready to be pickled, like, what is the pickling substance that you're using? Like, is it literally brine?
No.
Okay.
No. But that's awesome if it was. No, it's a very thin stain. So not quite a paint, it's more like a stain.
Gotcha.
It's white and it's watery, very watery. So you've got to stir it, and the product says to stir it throughout your work so that you don't just stir it once at the beginning, because I guess the coloring agent will settle to the bottom. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I would stir it throughout, because I would notice, I'd be like, it doesn't look as white or as milky as it does when I started. So I sort of used a paint stick, and I swirled the paint, and then what I would do is I would take the paint or the pickling stain in this case, and I would do it with the paintbrush on one strip of wood at a time. So as I would put it on, Nidhi, I would take a rag and I would remove the stain off that piece of wood so that it would absorb but not look like it had been painted. Rather, it would look like the wood had been stained. And so I would remove anything, and sometimes when you use a stain, it will drip and whatnot, or you'll put a little bit more on one side to the other. By using my rag and sort of streaking it across the piece of wood, I would remove that. So I went and did the entire wall, at which point it did not look great. The first coat does not look great. It just makes everything kind of looked a little bit peachy, or a little bit not so great. So hence I would do the second round. But I had to wait about 2 hours between the first round and the second round, because you want it to sort of dry, right? So at that point,
couldn't you just use a different kind of stain?
I think you could use paint and water it down, but I used a proper pickling agent.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I let it dry. I actually went back to the hardware store to purchase more rags, because I was going through them so quickly, because you don't want to use a rag that's been saturated with the stain. You want to use a relatively dry rag. So I went and bought more rags, cut them into smaller strips, and would use them. And once I used them once or twice, I would throw them out, because they would be saturated with the stain that I was removing, or the pickling agent I was removing. So hence I do the second coat. And now it's starting to look a little bit more white, a little bit more beachy, but still not where I wanted it to be. So at this point, I'm doing the third coat. And what I'm doing is I'm being meticulous with coloring in between the slats of wood. So where there would be a space, I'm coloring it in with paint. Or, sorry, not with paint, with the pickling stain. And then, Nidhi, the problem is that third coat looked great, But I was trying to go for the effect of shiplap, which is really in, which is this kind of look of, you know, Cape Cod or like a beachy kind of
Right.
boat kind of look, right? And I realized, or what Amanda said was, because we don't see the line that separates a lot of the slats of wood, it doesn't have the shiplap effect. So remember that tool I was telling you about that I used to scrape the wallpaper off?
Yeah.
I use that same tool because it has a sharp kind of point to it to kind of excavate all the paint that I got into those little crevices to make each individual board stand out. And that is the pickling of the wall. And I think that brings us to the end of the pickle episode,
Marco, that was fascinating.
to say the least.
So
I told
many
you to
ways.
just, I told you just to sit back
So
and
many
relax.
ways.
So I hope our listeners were able to listen and sleep, or at the very least, listen and relax on this, the pickle episode.
The Pickle episode. We thank you as always. Please feel free to rate us on iTunes. We are happy to read your comments. Send us your emails. Tweet us at Listen and Sleep.
Tell us about things that you've pickled or that you pickle, or your experience in the pickling of wood process.
Please
or process,
do.
as we would say in Canada.
If you'd like a pickling episode part 2, this is how you're going to get it,
I
my
guess.
friends. As always, we are produced by Drumcast Productions, and we were recording from Toronto, Canada. Thank you once again, and as always, we hope that you listen and sleep.